He was a king in a $3,000 suit, and his kingdom was built on shadows and fear. She was a waitress, invisible, carrying a tray and 15 years of secrets. In a world where one wrong word could get you killed, Alessandro Moretti, the most dangerous man in the city, just made the mistake of shouting at the one woman who could destroy him. He thought she was nobody. But when she spoke one simple sentence, the restaurant, his guards, and his entire world froze. This isn't just a romance, it's a reckoning. The air in Lastelladoro was thick enough to cut. It wasn't just the smell of truffle oil and old Barolo. It was the suffocating presence of Alessandro Moretti. Alessandro sat at the restaurant's private alcove, table 12, shielded by smoked glass, and two sentinels who stood with the unsettling stillness of statues. He was a man carved from sharp angles and cold control. At 36, he was the Don of the Moretti family, a position he'd held for 15 agonizing years. Tonight, that control was slipping. A lucrative port deal, one that would legitimize his Setapali olive oil import-export business and finally wash the family's money clean, was crumbling. The Bianchi family was squeezing him, and his lieutenants were restless. "It's a power play, Alex," whispered his consigliere, Marco Vieri, a man with a face like a worn leather briefcase. "Bianchi knows we need this." Alessandro's hand tightened on his water glass. "Bianchi," he said, his voice a low gravel, "is a snake who enjoys the squeeze. He forgets what happens to snakes." He wore a custom Brioni suit, but he felt like the exposed, desperate teenager he'd once been. He hated that feeling. Across the dining room, Amelia Mia Russo balanced a heavy tray on her left hand, her right arm burning from the strain. At 29, her life was a repeating loop of sore feet, cheap rent, and the smell of garlic bread she could no longer stand. Lastelladoro was the top of the food chain for a waitress, but it was still a cage. She was invisible, and that's how she'd survived. She'd been Mia Russo for 15 years. Before that, she was someone else. Someone who died in a fire that never happened. Tonight, table 12 was a storm cloud. She'd warned the new busboy, a nervous kid named Peter, to stay clear, but Peter, eager to impress, saw Alessandro Moretti's water glass was low. He darted in. It happened in sickening slow motion. Peter, shaking, reached for the pitcher. His elbow caught the edge of a wine glass. A tidal wave of deep red, a 900-a-bottle Brunello washed across the table, soaking a stack of architectural blueprints and port manifests. Silence. Alessandro Moretti did not move. He simply stared at the spreading stain. The two guards, arms now crossed, looked like they were about to execute the boy. Mr. Moretti. I'm so sorry, Peter stammered, tears welling. Alessandro looked up. His eyes, usually a flat, cold grey, were blazing. When he spoke, it wasn't a shout. It was a precise, venomous hiss that cut through the entire restaurant. "You clumsy little fool. Do you have any idea what you've done? Get him out of my sight, Marco." Marco moved, grabbing the boy's arm. But Amelia, acting on an instinct she'd suppressed for a decade and a half, stepped forward. "It was an accident," she said. Her voice was firm, though her heart was hammering against her ribs. Alessandro's head snapped toward her. He had never noticed her before. Now, he saw her, a slip of a woman in a black apron, with tired eyes, a stubborn chin, and a cascade of dark, unruly hair tied back in a simple knot. "And who are you?" he sneered, his contained fury transferring to this new target. "His mother? This is a private meeting." "I'm his manager," Amelia lied, stepping between Alessandro and the trembling boy. "He's new. I'll take the damages out of my paycheck." Alessandro let out a short, brutal laugh. Your paycheck? You think your minimum wage tips could cover the ink on these papers? You, with your cheap shoes and your martyr complex? You are worthless. You are nothing. The word worthless struck Amelia like a physical blow. It was a word that had haunted her, a word whispered in the dark of countless lonely nights. The boy, the wine, the restaurant, it all faded away. All she saw was the arrogant, cruel man in the expensive suit, a man who built his empire on the bones of others, on the bones of her father. The fear that had been her skin for 15 years evaporated, replaced by a white-hot, diamond-hard rage. She looked him dead in the eye. The murmuring restaurant, the clinking of forks, the quiet jazz music, it all stopped as if the world was holding its breath. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the silence like a gunshot. "You're right, Sandro." Alessandro's blood turned to ice. Sandro. No one had called him that in 15 years, not since... Amelia took one step closer. The air crackled. Marco's hand went to the gun under his jacket, but he was frozen, confused. She said the one sentence that changed everything. "I'm worthless. Just like you said I was when I spilled paint on your father's suit, right before my father was killed." Everyone froze. Marco Vieri's mouth fell open. The two bodyguards looked at each other. Their professional calm shattered. Alessandro Moretti, the don of the city, looked as if he had been shot. His face, moments before a mask of rage, was now a canvas of stark, pale shock. He stared at the waitress, the tired eyes, the shape of her mouth, the scar faint as a spider's web, just below her left collarbone, visible where her uniform buttoned. He'd given her that scar. They were climbing the big oak on the De Luca estate, and he dared her to jump. He rose from his chair, his hands shaking. "Leah," he whispered, the name a ghost on his lips. "Amelia. De Luca?" The name Amelia De Luca hung in the air like poison gas. In Alessandro's world, that name was synonymous with ghost. The De Luca family had been erased. Antonio De Luca, the previous Don and Alessandro's father's closest friend, had been assassinated in a brutal power grab. His wife and daughter, Amelia, were reported to have died in a tragic house fire, just days later. "Clear the restaurant," Alessandro ordered. His voice was no longer the sharp instrument of a boss. It was the choked, disbelieving rasp of a man seeing the dead walk. Marco Vieri, ever the professional, sprang into action. "Everyone out, now! A private emergency! The restaurant is closed!" Patrons, sensing the dangerous shift in the atmosphere, didn't argue. They grabbed their coats and purses, some throwing cash on the tables, others just fleeing. Waitstaff and kitchen crew scattered. Within 3 minutes, Lastelladoro was a tomb, silent save for the 3 people in the alcove: Alessandro, Marco, and the woman who was supposed to be ashes. Peter, the busboy, had vanished in the chaos, for which Amelia was grateful. Alessandro sank back into his chair, his gaze locked on her. He looked undone. "It's not possible," he breathed. We went to the funeral. There was a coffin." "A closed coffin," Amelia said. Her voice was brittle. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a bone-deep tremor. She had just detonated her entire life. For 15 years, she had been Mia Russo, the invisible waitress. Now, she was Amelia De Luca, the one person who could challenge Alessandro Moretti's claim to power. "Leah, where have you been?" His voice was desperate, pleading. "I looked. My father. We looked for you." Amelia let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Looked? You stopped looking when the ground got cold. Where have I been? Hiding? Hiding from this." She gestured around the opulent restaurant. "Hiding from you." "From me?" Alessandro was on his feet again. "I was your friend. I would have protected you." "Protected me?" She spat, the word tasting like acid. "You're the one who benefited. My father is murdered, and your father, the consigliere, steps in. And when he passes, who gets the throne? Not the De Luca heir. She's conveniently dead. No, it's Sandro. Alessandro Moretti, the new Don. How very convenient." The accusation struck him harder than the spilled wine. You think I had something to do with your father's death?" "I don't know what to think," she cried, the years of suppressed grief and anger finally breaking through. "I was 14. I was told to run, to change my name, to never look back. The man who told me that was your father. He told me the family was poison and that everyone was a suspect. That includes you." Marco, who had been silent, stepped forward. "Boss, this is a complication. If she's who she says if she's alive, Stefano Bianchi." Alessandro held up a hand, silencing him. His mind was racing, fitting 15 years of fractured pieces together. The guilt he'd carried, the nightmares of the fire, the way his own father, Alberto, had become a cold, hard stranger in the months after Antonio's death. "She's alive," Alessandro said, more to himself than to Marco. He looked at Emilia, and for a second, the Don was gone. It was just Sandro, the boy who used to steal peaches with her from the neighbor's orchard. "Your scar, from the oak tree." Emilia instinctively touched the faint line on her collarbone. "You pushed me," she whispered, the memory suddenly vivid. "I dared you," he corrected, a flicker of a smile so sad it broke her heart. "You never could resist a dare." The moment shattered. Marco cleared his throat. "Alessandro, we have a problem. The Bianchi deal. If they hear a De Luca is alive, they will see her as a rallying point for the old guard. They will see her as a threat to your legitimacy. We must see her as a threat." "She is not a threat," Alessandro roared, the Don returning. "I am right here," Emilia shouted. "Stop talking about me like I'm a chess piece." "That's exactly what you are, Principessa," Marco said, his voice unkind. "You just walked onto the board and knocked over the king. You have no idea what you've done." "I have to go," Emilia said, backing away. "This was a mistake. I'll quit. I'll leave the city. You'll never see me again." Alessandro moved faster than she could have believed. He blocked her path, his large frame a sudden, intimidating barrier. "No," he said, his voice flat and final. "What do you mean, no?" "You just announced to my consigliere that you are Emilia De Luca. You spoke my childhood name in a room full of my men. You have linked me to the De Luca murder. You don't get to leave the city anymore." "You can't keep me," she said, panic rising in her throat. "I can," he replied, "and I will. Marco is right about one thing. You are in danger. Now that you've shown your face, you're the biggest loose end in this city. Stefano Bianchi will be the first to try and tie it." "I don't need your protection." "It's not a request," Alessandro said. His eyes were cold again, the brief warmth of Sandro extinguished. He was the Don once more, faced with a crisis. "You are a De Luca. You are, by blood, the most valuable and dangerous person I know, and I own you now, Marco. Boss? Take her to the penthouse. Use the service elevator. No one sees her. Put 2 men on the door. No one gets in or out without my direct approval. That includes her." "No." Emilia struggled as Marco took her arm. "You can't do this. This is kidnapping." "This," Alessandro said, turning his back to her, "is protection. You're in the family again, Leah. And you just learned your first lesson. He picked up one of the ruined, wine-soaked blueprints. The family keeps what is theirs. Amelia was half dragged, half pushed through the kitchen service exit. She was no longer Mea Russo, the invisible waitress. She was Amelia De Luca, the prisoner in a gilded cage. The penthouse was less of an apartment and more of a fortress in the sky. It occupied the top 2 floors of the Moretti Tower, a sleek, black glass monolith that pierced the city skyline. The elevator opened directly into a living room the size of a basketball court, with 20-foot-high windows offering a breathtaking, agonizing view of the freedom she'd just lost. The decor was minimalist, cold, and relentlessly expensive. Dark woods, chrome, and vast expanses of white marble. It was the home of a man who loved nothing. "These are your quarters," Marco said, gesturing to a hallway. "The kitchen is stocked. The television has every channel. Do not," he added, his voice hardening, "touch the computer in the office, and do not go near the main elevator. It's code-locked anyway." "And these guys?" Amelia gestured to the 2 hulking guards now stationed by that elevator, pretending to study the abstract art. "They are not for conversation. They have orders to stop you from leaving. Do not test them." Marco's eyes scanned her face, devoid of pity. "You should have stayed a ghost, Principessa." He turned and left, the elevator doors sliding shut with a heavy, final thud. Amelia was alone. She ran to the windows, her palms pressing against the cool, thick glass. The city glittered below, a million lives moving freely, while she was trapped. She screamed, a raw, frustrated sound that was swallowed by the sheer size of the room. The first day was a blur of panic. She checked every door, every window. The windows, of course, didn't open. The back stairs led to a steel door that was, as promised, locked. She was a bird in a diamond-studded cage. On the second day, the anger gave way to a creeping dread. And memories. This opulent prison was a far cry from the home she remembered. The De Luca estate had been warm, sprawling, and filled with life. Her father, Antonio, a man who laughed with his whole body and smelled of cigars and citrus. And then there was Sandro. She walked into the sterile kitchen and opened the $20,000 refrigerator. It was filled with bottled water and high-protein meals. She found a bag of lemons and held one to her face, inhaling deeply. Flashback, age 13. She was hiding in the branches of the great oak, her knees skinned. "Come on, Leah," Sandro called from below. He was 15, lanky, and already burdened with a serious face. He was the son of the consigliere, Alberto Moretti, and her constant shadow. "You said it was easy," she yelled down. "I tore my shirt. It is easy. You're just doing it wrong. Stop thinking, just jump. I'll catch you." "You'd better, Sandro. If you drop me, I'll tell my father you're the one who's been stealing his lemons for your mother." He'd laughed, a rare, bright sound. "It's a deal, De Luca." She leaped. He caught her, just as he'd promised, his arms strong even then, and they tumbled onto the grass in a heap of laughter. He smelled of soap and sunshine. "See? I told you." She dropped the lemon. The man who had locked her in this tower was not that boy. That boy was dead. He'd died with her father. Alessandro didn't return for 2 days. When he did, it was late. He came in looking wrecked. His tie was loose, his jacket was gone, and he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. He found her in the library, a room she'd discovered, filled with books he'd clearly never read. She was curled in a leather chair, pretending to read a biography of some Roman emperor. "You've eaten," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Your guards deliver food as if they're handling a bomb," she replied, not looking up. He walked to the wet bar and poured 2 fingers of whiskey. He didn't offer her one. Stefano Bianchi knows you're alive. Amelia's head snapped up. What? How? This city has ears in the walls. A waitress disappears the same night the Don clears La Stella. A whisper starts. A ghost was seen. The De Luca heir. Bianchi isn't stupid. He's testing the waters. So let me go, she pleaded, standing up. I'll deny it. I'll go back to being Mia. I don't want this Alessandro. It's too late for that, he said, swallowing the whiskey in one gulp. You're Amelia De Luca. You can't put the bullet back in the gun. You're a claim. A blood claim. And he knows it. A claim to what? This organization of thugs? I don't want it. It doesn't matter what you want, he snapped, slamming the glass down. The sound echoed in the massive room. It's what you are. You are Antonio De Luca's daughter. To the old guard, the ones who tolerated my father's rise only to prevent a war, you are a symbol. To Stefano Bianchi, you're the one person who can unite them against him. Unite them against him? Or against you? She challenged. His eyes met hers, and the coldness was back, layered with a profound exhaustion. Both. But he's the one who will put a bullet in your head to stop it. I'm the one putting guards at your door. It's the same thing, isn't it? A cage is a cage. He walked toward her, and she had to fight the instinct to step back. He stopped just inches from her, forcing her to tilt her head to look up at him. A cage keeps things in, he said, his voice dangerously low. A fortress keeps things out. You need to learn the difference. Bianchi didn't just want your father's territory, Leah. He wanted him erased. He's the one who killed him. You don't know that, she whispered, her heart pounding. I know it, Alessandro said, with chilling certainty. I just never had a reason to prove it. Now, he looked at her, his gaze tracing her features as if memorizing a map. Now I have a reason. He turned to leave. Sandro, she called out. He paused, his back to her. The night he died, she said, her voice shaking. I was supposed to meet him in his study. I was late. I was hiding in the hall. I heard him. He was yelling. Alessandro turned around, his face grim. Yelling at who? I don't know, she lied. I couldn't see. I just heard him say, the deal is off, Stefano. I'll see you in hell before I let you poison this family. And then I heard the shots. I just ran. She had lied. She hadn't heard Stefano. She had heard Bianchi. But she'd also seen the man who pulled the trigger, a man she didn't recognize. But she had seen Stefano Bianchi walking away from the study just minutes before, smiling. Alessandro's face hardened into a mask of cold fury. You heard him say Bianchi's name? Amelia nodded, tears welling. I've been running from that name for 15 years. Not anymore, Alessandro said. He strode back to her, and for the first time he touched her. He gently, almost awkwardly, brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. His skin was calloused. You're not running. You're home, and I'm going to finish this. He left her then, and the silence of the penthouse felt different. It was no longer empty. It was full of their shared past and the promise of a very bloody future. The whispers in the city's underworld turned into a roar. Amelia De Luca is alive. She's with Moretti. For Stefano Bianchi, this was an existential threat. Bianchi was a man who believed in total victory. He hadn't just wanted to defeat Antonio De Luca. He'd wanted to salt the earth where his legacy stood. The deaths of Antonio's wife and daughter were meant to be the final, brutal punctuation mark. Now, a living, breathing Amelia De Luca, under the protection of the new Don, was a catastrophe. She was a living witness. She was a blood claim. She was a problem that needed to be erased, permanently this time. Amelia had been in the penthouse for a week. The initial terror had subsided into a dull, restless boredom. Alessandro visited nightly. Their conversations were stilted, careful dances around the chasm of 15 years. He brought her things, not flowers or chocolates, but things he thought she'd need. A laptop. It's clean, he assured her, wiped and not connected to my network. Books, a sketchbook and a set of charcoal pencils. He'd remembered. She was sketching the city skyline, lost in the shading of a distant cloud when the first shot rang out. It wasn't a bang, it was a sharp crack, followed by the explosive tinkle of the massive, triple-paned window shattering. Amelia screamed and dropped to the marble floor, covering her head. A second crack impacted the wall just inches from where she had been standing, sending a spray of plaster and paint across the room. A sniper. The two guards by the elevator, who she'd come to know as David and Paul, were screaming into their earpieces. Code red! Code red! Penthouse is compromised! Sniper fire from the east! One of them, David, lunged for her, grabbing her by the waist and dragging her behind the solid marble wet bar. Stay down! Stay down! Amelia was hyperventilating, her body locked in the same primal terror she'd felt the night her father died. It's happening again. He found me. He's going to kill me. The firefight was brief and one-sided. She heard the thwack, thwack, thwack of return fire from other Moretti men, stationed on the roof and balconies. The sniper, having lost the element of surprise, ceased firing. 10 minutes later, the main elevator doors burst open and Alessandro stormed in, flanked by 4 more men, all armed with tactical rifles. His face was a terrifying mask of white-hot rage. He saw the shattered window, the bullet hole in the wall, and then he saw Amelia, curled into a tight ball behind the bar, shaking uncontrollably. "Get her out of here," he commanded, his voice shaking with fury. "Now, take her to the safe house, the real one." "Boss," Marco said, right behind him. "We don't know if the route is clear." "I don't care," Alessandro roared, a sound so primal it made even his own men flinch. "Get her out. Go! Go!" He rushed to Amelia, pulling her to her feet. She was limp, in shock. Leah, look at me." Her eyes were wide, unseeing. He gripped her shoulders, his fingers digging in. "Amelia, you're safe. I have you." "He found me," she whimpered. He shot at me." "He missed," Alessandro said, his voice fierce. "And he will never get that chance again." He personally half-carried her to the elevator, surrounding her with his men, creating a human shield. They descended not to the lobby, but to the sub-basement parking garage. An armored black SUV was waiting, engine running. Amelia was pushed into the back, Alessandro piling in right next to her, never letting go of her arm. The SUV peeled out of the garage, followed by a second identical vehicle, and sped into the city. She looked at Alessandro. The man who was her captor was now, unmistakably, her protector. The cold, controlled Don was gone. In his place was a man vibrating with a protective instinct so powerful it was terrifying. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "A place my father built," he said, his eyes scanning the traffic, looking for threats. "A place no one has used in 15 years. Not even I knew the codes until today." They drove for an hour, leaving the city, heading up into the wooded, rocky hills north of the suburbs. They turned onto an unmarked gravel road, which ended at a sheer rock face. One of the men punched a code into a discrete panel, and a massive, camouflaged steel door slid open, revealing a tunnel. The SUV drove inside, the door sealed behind them, plunging them into darkness before motion sensor lights flickered on, illuminating a concrete bunker. It was a fortress. "Bianchi just made the biggest mistake of his life," Alessandro said, his voice echoing in the concrete enclosure. "What?" she asked. He turned to her, his grey eyes burning with a terrifying new purpose. "He tried to kill you. He proved he's the one, and he just gave me a reason to break the truce my father made." "Truce? What truce?" Alessandro looked at her, his expression pained. "The one that kept me from avenging your father. The one that was built on the lie that you were dead." He got out of the car and opened her door. "Welcome to the real gilded cage, Leah. This time the walls aren't glass." The safe house was a marvel of paranoid engineering. Built into the granite hillside by Alessandro's father, Alberto, it was stocked with enough food, water, and ammunition to withstand a 6-month siege. It was also, Amelia discovered, a prison of beige walls and recycled air. But it was safe. For the first time in 15 years, she wasn't looking over her shoulder. She was locked in, but the monster was locked out. While Alessandro returned to the city to wage his new war, he left her with David, the guard who had saved her, and a new, older woman named Sofia, who was a combination of cook and chaperone. Alessandro, meanwhile, was tearing his city apart. The sniper had been a professional hired out of Eastern Europe, and he'd vanished. But the rifle, a customized 338 Lapua, had been abandoned. Marco traced the serial number. It was part of a shipment imported by a shell corporation owned by Stefano Bianchi. It was proof, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't a confession. To move against a Don, Alessandro needed more. He needed to visit a ghost. Luca, the owl Gravano, had been Antonio de Luca's most trusted capo. After Antonio's murder and Alberto Moretti's rise to power, Luca had done the unthinkable. He'd retired. He'd taken his money and vanished to a small, quiet house on the coast, where he did nothing but read books and watch the tide. Alessandro found him on his porch, wrapped in a blanket, an old man of 70. "Sandro," Luca said, his eyes sharp as ever. "You've finally come. I wondered how long it would take." "You knew," Alessandro said, sitting opposite the old man. "I knew," Luca agreed. "You knew Bianchi killed Antonio. We all knew," Luca said, his voice a dry rasp. "Knowing and proving are different animals. And you knew Amelia was alive." The old man's eyes widened. That he had not known. Alberto, that magnificent bastard, he actually did it. He got her out. "He told me she died in the fire," Alessandro said, his voice laced with the bitterness of a 15-year-old betrayal. "He let me mourn her. He let me believe." "He let you believe what you needed to believe," Luca snapped, sitting forward. "Do you think you could have become what you are if you knew she was out there? Do you think you could have made the hard choices, the truce? No. You'd have been a boy blinded by vengeance. You'd have burned the family to the ground trying to avenge her." It all clicked into place, the pieces of a puzzle he never knew he was holding. "My father," Alessandro said, piecing it together. "He couldn't go to war with Bianchi. Bianchi was too strong, had too many allies. Antonio's murder was clean, there was no proof. So my father made a deal." "A truce," Luca confirmed. Bianchi would stop his power grab. He would support Alberto as the new, neutral Don. The price was that the De Luca line had to end. Officially, permanently. Your father staged the fire. He killed Amelia and her mother to buy peace, to save the family from a war that would have destroyed all of us. Alessandro felt sick. His entire reign, his entire life, was built on a lie. A truce with his mentor's killer. He sacrificed his honor, Alessandro whispered. He sacrificed Antonio's memory to save the organization. He saved you, Luca said softly. And he saved her. He knew one day Bianchi would slip. And he knew you were the only one who could one day be strong enough to fix it. Alessandro drove back to the safe house, his world remade. He was not the son of a consigliere who had simply inherited the throne. He was the protector of a legacy, the chosen instrument of a vengeance 15 years in the making. He found Amelia in a small, dusty room at the back of the bunker. It was a storage room, filled with old furniture and sealed boxes. She was holding a small, wooden box, her hands trembling. This was my mother's," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. The box was full of old letters and trinkets. "Leah," he started. "This was my father's room," she said, looking around. "Wasn't it? Your father. He built this for my father. A place to hide if things went bad." "Yes," Alessandro said. "They were like brothers. And your father betrayed him." "No," Alessandro said, moving toward her. "He saved you. He saved us." He told her everything, about the truce, about the staged fire, about the deal with Bianchi. He told her how his father had sacrificed his own name, living as a traitor in the eyes of the old guard, all to stop a war and bide his time. Amelia listened, the anger on her face slowly melting into a profound, complicated grief. "So, he wasn't a monster. Your father. He was a prisoner, just like me." "He was a man who made an impossible choice," Alessandro said. "He lied to you. He did, to protect me, to protect you." Amelia looked back down at the box. "I found this." She pulled out a small, tarnished silver locket. She clicked it open. Inside were 2 tiny, faded photographs. One was of a beaming 12-year-old Amelia. The other was of a 14-year-old Sandro, his arm slung over her shoulder, both of them grinning after stealing the lemons. Tucked behind the photo was a tiny folded piece of paper. It was her father's handwriting. "My Leah, if you are reading this, the world has gone dark. Trust no one but Sandro. He is not his father. He has a good heart. Protect him, as I know he will protect you." "Pah." Amelia's legs gave out. She sank onto an old trunk, the letter clutched in her hand. Alessandro knelt in front of her, taking the locket. He looked at the boy he used to be, and the girl he had never, ever forgotten. "He knew," Alessandro whispered. "Your father knew. He trusted me." "He told me to protect you," Amelia said, a tear rolling down her cheek. "All this time, I thought I was hiding from you, but my father wanted me to run to you." The distance between them evaporated. All the years, the pain, the lies, they were gone. He was no longer the Don, and she was no longer the waitress. They were just Sandro and Leah, the only 2 people left in the world who understood. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "I'm not my father, Leah. I won't make a truce. I won't bide my time. I'm going to burn Stefano Bianchi to the ground." "How?" she whispered, her hands coming up to cup his face. "He wants the last De Luca?" Alessandro said, his voice a low growl. "We'll give her to him, but this time the ghost bites back." The plan was simple, and it was insane. Amelia was the bait. Alessandro's logic was cold and precise. "Bianchi tried to kill you once because you were a rumor. Now, we make you a threat. We leak that you're making a play. You're rallying your father's old guard, and you have proof of who killed him." "But I don't," Amelia said, pacing the bunker's command center. "The only proof is my word. I heard his name. I saw him leave." "It doesn't matter," Alessandro said. "It's the threat of proof. He will have to silence you. But he won't send a sniper this time. It's too messy, too public. He'll want a meeting. He'll want to look you in the eye, to gloat before he kills you. Men like Bianchi, their ego is their weakness. And when he meets me, I'll be listening. My men will be everywhere. We get his confession. We get it all. It's too dangerous, Marco Vieri said, his face pale. He had been quiet ever since the revelation of Alberto's plan. Putting her in a room with him, it's a suicide mission. She won't be alone, Alessandro said. But it has to be her. It's the only way. Amelia, who had been terrified for half her life, felt a strange calm settle over her. She looked at the locket, still in her hand. Protect him. I'll do it, she said. Marco stared at her, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. Boss, there's something else. Something you need to know. Not now, Marco, Alessandro said, studying a blueprint of their chosen meeting place. Lastelladoro, the restaurant where it all began. It was closed for renovations, crawling with Alessandro's men. Now, boss, Marco insisted, his voice cracking with an unfamiliar emotion. It's about Mia Russo. Alessandro turned. What about her? While you were with Luca, I was digging. I couldn't let it go. How does the De Luca heir stay hidden for 15 years? How does she survive? I ran a check on Mia Russo's financials, her work history. She was barely scraping by, but what? But, Marco said, every month, for 15 years on the 1st, a cashier's check for $2,000 was deposited into Mia Russo's bank account, always from a different bank, always untraceable. Alessandro and Amelia locked eyes. Someone was helping me, she whispered. All this time, I thought it was just luck. A scholarship I didn't remember applying for, a landlord who suddenly forgot to raise the rent. Who, Marco? Alessandro demanded. Who was the benefactor? Marco looked down at his hands. He seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. Your father, Alberto. Before he died, he gave me one last order. He told me, the girl is safe. She's in the system. But she will need a guardian angel, a ghost to watch a ghost. He didn't tell me who she was or where she was. He just gave me an account number. My job was to fund it, to make sure she was protected, but to never, ever make contact. Amelia's hand went to her mouth. You were my guardian angel? I didn't know it was you, Marco said, his voice thick. I was just following orders, protecting a ghost. When you showed up at the restaurant, I didn't recognize you. You were a woman, not a girl. I thought you were an imposter, a trap set by Bianchi, pretending to be the girl I'd spent 15 years protecting from afar. That's why I was so hostile. That's why I told Alessandro you were a threat. Marco Vieri, the stoic consigliere, was trembling. I failed him. I failed you. I was supposed to protect you, and I didn't even recognize you. I pointed a gun at the very person I swore to protect. Marco. Amelia stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. You didn't fail. You kept me alive. You're the reason I survived long enough to be standing here. You were the only family I had, and you didn't even know it. Marco looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Principessa. Alessandro put a hand on his consigliere's shoulder. The three of them stood in silence, a triangle of shared history, lies, and a new, unbreakable loyalty. All right, Alessandro said, his voice thick with emotion. The plan changes. Amelia is not the bait. What? She protested. She's the trap. He looked at Marco. And you're the one who's going to help me set it. Bianchi trusts you. He thinks you're a pragmatic snake, just like him. He's been trying to poach you for years." "He has," Marco confirmed, his composure returning. "Good," Alessandro smiled, a cold, sharp expression. "You're finally going to accept his offer. You're going to tell him you're switching sides, and you're going to tell him you're bringing him a gift." "What gift?" Marco asked. "Me," Amelia said, understanding. "You're going to betray Alessandro and hand me over to Bianchi." "Exactly," Alessandro said. "You'll tell him Amelia De Luca is unmanageable, that she's going to ruin Alessandro, and that you want to cut a deal to save the family. You'll bring her to La Stella to hand her over, and when he's there, comfortable, gloating—" "He'll have nowhere to run," Marco finished, a dangerous light in his eyes. "It's still a risk," Amelia said. "It is," Alessandro agreed. He took her hand, his grip warm and strong. "But this time we're not running, we're not hiding, we're hunting, and we'll do it together." The air in the bunker shifted. It was no longer a cage, it was a war room. The old loyalties were gone, replaced by something stronger. The consigliere who had been her secret protector, the Don who had been her childhood friend, and the ghost who had finally come home. "Let's go," Amelia said. "Let's go end this." Lastelladoro was a stage set for a tragedy. The tables were draped in white cloths, the wine glasses polished. From the outside, it looked ready for dinner service. But hidden in the kitchen, in the wine cellar, in the private offices upstairs, were 20 of Alessandro's most trusted men, armed to the teeth and listening. Every table had a tiny microphone. Every angle was covered by a hidden camera, all feeding back to a van parked 2 blocks away. Amelia wore a simple black dress and a wire. Her heart was a trapped bird against her ribs. Alessandro, from the command van, spoke into her earpiece, a tiny skin-toned device. "He's 2 minutes out," Alessandro's voice said, calm and steady. "Marco is with him, just like we planned. Remember, Leah, let him talk. Let his pride be his downfall." "I remember," she whispered. "And Leah?" "Yes?" "Sandro," he said, his voice dropping. "He'll catch you. I'll always catch you." A tear threatened to spill. "I know." The front doors opened. Marco Vieri entered first, his face a mask of anxious betrayal. Behind him, flanked by 6 of his own men, was Stefano Bianchi. Bianchi was a short, immaculate man in his late 60s, with a warm smile that never, ever reached his cold, shark-like eyes. He looked at Amelia as if she were a piece of art he was considering buying. "Amelia De Luca," he said, his voice smooth as aged silk. "My goodness, the rumors are true. You are a vision. You have your mother's eyes, and your father's." He tapped his temple. "Unfortunate stubbornness." Amelia's hands clenched. "Bianchi." "Please," he said, gesturing to table 12, the alcove where this all began. "Sit. Marco, you've done well. A truly pragmatic choice." "Alessandro is losing his grip," Marco said, playing his part, his voice tight with resentment. "He's obsessed with this ghost. He's going to war over a girl. It's bad for business." "Indeed it is," Bianchi chuckled, settling into the chair. His men fanned out, securing the exits. "War is so uncivilized. Your father understood that, Amelia. Antonio was a good man, a bit sentimental, but a good man. A pity. You killed him," Amelia said, her voice flat. Bianchi raised an eyebrow. "Direct. I like that. Yes, I did. Well," he waved a dismissive hand. "My men did. He was an obstacle. He wanted to keep the families in the dark ages. Honor. Tradition. Ridiculous. This is a business." "And me?" Amelia asked. "My mother? Were we bad for business too?" "You," Bianchi said, leaning forward, "were a loose end, an heir, a symbol. And symbols, they're dangerous. The fire was supposed to be the end of it. A clean sheet. But Alberto, he was clever. More clever than I gave him credit for, hiding you in plain sight. And now? She pressed. What happens now? Now, Bianchi smiled. We correct the mistake. Marco, you will be well rewarded. You will be my consigliere. Alessandro will have an accident. A car bomb, perhaps. Something public. A message. You won't get away with this, Amelia said. My dear, Bianchi laughed. I already have. For 15 years. The other families, the commission, they are weak. They follow strength. And with you gone, and Alessandro gone, I will be the only strength left. And that, Alessandro's voice suddenly boomed through the restaurant's hidden speaker system, is the confession we were waiting for. Bianchi froze. His head snapped toward Marco. You, now! Marco roared, diving and tackling Bianchi, shielding him from the ensuing chaos. The doors to the kitchen burst open. The glass from the private rooms shattered inward. Alessandro's men, clad in black, poured into the room. Moretti! Bianchi's men yelled, drawing their weapons. The restaurant erupted in a symphony of gunfire. It was brutal, close-quarters combat. Amelia scrambled under the table as Alessandro had drilled her. She watched as Marco, in his element, disarmed Bianchi and put a gun to his head. This is for Antonio, you son of a bitch! Alessandro himself was a whirlwind of controlled violence, moving with his men, directing fire. It was almost over. Bianchi's men were down or had surrendered. Except one. A wounded Bianchi guard, hiding behind the bar, raised his pistol. He wasn't aiming at Alessandro. He was aiming at Marco, who was busy cuffing Bianchi. Marco! Amelia screamed. There was no time. She did the only thing she could. She bolted from under the table, grabbing a heavy silver wine bucket, and threw it with all her strength. It struck the gunman's arm, sending his shot wide, shattering a mirror. The gunman turned, his eyes wide with surprise, and pointed the gun at her. She had time for one thought. Sandro. A shot rang out, but it wasn't from the gunman. It was from Alessandro. The gunman collapsed. Silence descended, broken only by the ringing in her ears and the groans of the wounded. Alessandro was at her side in an instant, his gun still smoking. He hauled her to her feet, his hands checking her for wounds, his eyes wild with terror and relief. Are you hit? Leah, are you hit? No. No, I'm fine, she panted. You? I'm fine. He pulled her into a desperate, crushing hug, burying his face in her hair. You saved Marco, he whispered, his voice shaking. You saved me, she whispered back, clinging to him. Marco hauled a furious, sputtering Bianchi to his feet. We have him, boss, and we have the recording. Alessandro finally let Amelia go, though he kept one arm locked around her waist. He walked over to Bianchi, his face cold as stone. It's over, Stefano. You think this is over? Bianchi spat. You think the commission will accept this? A recording? You broke the truce. You broke it, Alessandro countered, when you sent a sniper to my home. You broke it when you murdered Antonio De Luca. He nodded to his men. Take him. Luca Gravano is waiting with the heads of the other families. They're very eager to hear his full confession. As Bianchi was dragged away, the restaurant was quiet again. It was just Alessandro, Amelia, and Marco, standing among the wreckage of their past. Marco nodded to them both, a look of profound respect. I'll go supervise the cleanup. He left them alone. Amelia looked at Alessandro. He was bruised, covered in dust, and had a cut on his cheek. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. So, she said, her voice trembling, what happens now? Don Moretti? He smiled, a real smile this time, the one she remembered from the oak tree. Sandro, he corrected her. just Sandro. He stepped closer, gently touching the faint scar on her collarbone. You were never worthless, Leah. You were never a ghost. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. You were the only thing that was ever real. And you, she whispered, her hands finding their way to his chest, feeling his heart hammer against his ribs. You're not the man who shouts at waitresses. No, he agreed, but I am the man who will spend the rest of his life making sure she never has to be one again. He kissed her. It wasn't the kiss of a don or a savior. It was the kiss of a boy who had finally found the girl he'd lost. A kiss that tasted of gunfire, 15 years of pain, and finally, of home. The story of the waitress and the Mafia boss could have ended in tragedy, but for Emilia De Luca and Alessandro Moretti, it was a brutal new beginning. The fall of Stefano Bianchi sent shock waves through the underworld, and with Emilia's blessing and her father's recovered letters, Alessandro's power was cemented, not as a tyrant, but as a true leader. He didn't just rebuild his family, he rebuilt it with her. Lastelladoro was closed for good. But the Moretti De Luca family, united by blood and a trial by fire, was stronger than ever. They were two halves of a legacy, one of shadow, one of light, ruling the city not with fear, but with a new kind of honor. She was no longer a waitress in hiding, and he was no longer a king on a cold throne. They were just Sandro and Leah, a promise kept after 15 long years. Thank you for listening to this intense story of karma, revenge, and a love that refused to die. If you were on the edge of your seat, don't forget to hit that like button. What part of Sandro and Leah's story was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more stories of dramatic twists and powerful romance, please share this video with a friend, and most importantly, click subscribe and ring that bell. You won't want to miss what we have coming next.